Let's see. All right. Well, we are live. Glenn, thank you for joining us today to the hopefully soon to be viewers. We'll answer a couple of questions. And to set the stage really quickly, what we do in this forum is ultimately just ask Glenn a couple of questions that we have been asked by our customer base, been asked by the Reddit community. And for anybody who is joining us, a reminder to please add your comments and we'll address them as quickly as possible. So we'll give it another minute for people to fill in and go from there. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a couple of folks joining us now. And Glenn, I've got our first question teed up. I'll go ahead and add this to the comment chat here. This is a DocuSign NetSuite specific question, so a little bit out of the ordinary. But the comment in question says, we're able to connect DocuSign and NetSuite. However, when you click the button saying with DocuSign, it's taken to a screen where the transaction is not loaded and not available for our signature before it gets sent out. Does anyone have any ideas on how to fix this?
Unfortunately, I'm not so sure I do. It sounds like something with DocuSign's script and their integration.
Yeah.
I think DocuSign support may be the only avenue here. I'm sure it's lot code. So yeah, I don't have a great help on that one, unfortunately. Yeah, so I think DocuSign support, NetSuite support's not going to be able to do anything. That's DocuSign's integration. So when you click that button, it's calling out the DocuSign, it's authenticating and trying to populate the transaction from NetSuite in there. So it's something to do with the synchronization between those two systems.
Yeah, that's what I figured. All right, well, we got a couple more folks joining today. As a reminder, as you log in, if you've got any questions, please add them to the comments and we'll add them to the banner. But I wanted to ask the next question. Let me go ahead and add that one in, and let's talk about good old AI. So your opinion of impact of AI in the NetSuite domain. We're right at the cusp of 24.2 coming out, so pretty excited to see some of the release notes there. Where do you see this being effective? How are you having some of your customers utilize NetSuite AI? Any instance workflows? Maybe you can speak a little bit about our own internal AI application as well.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. Right now they're doing generative text where it's kind of, I would say, kind of entry level stuff. For what AI can do for suggestions around client communications, email templates. But I think that's the tip of the spear, if you will, that it's going to get a lot more interesting where the system will be able to analyze your data, understand patterns and say, hey, you probably need to book this entry. We think this is good. It's going to be based on historical trends. We think you should memorize this transactions. It's also going to have notifications. If you think about and this is more a credit card company, like my Amex will tell me if a bill is increased month over month and it's like utilities or cable or something, it'll flag me. So I think you're going to have more of that kind of this AI sitting on top and looking at things. I also think you'll get more suggestions for reports or analytics of, hey, we've noticed a spike in this, and also identification of bottlenecks and processes. So it can start to self-correct, automate some of the error handling that you might have, and make suggestions. I think the days of autonomous systems running completely independent, unfortunately, that's hard to do with accounting and inventory and finance, but I think the notification and the identification of potential problems based on data in the system. So if you think about when you're going to run out of inventory, or if there's a spike in demand that's going to affect your supply chain, I think those are some real impacts where the system can come in, or AI can come in and say, hey, this is happening, you need to take corrective action, versus the standard process now, which is run your MRP engine, wait, take a look and see what pops out of there and make, and I do think there's always a case for educated decision making, because a spike does not indicate a trend, right? Those are called outliers from a statistical point of view. So there's always going to be those anomalies, but I think being able to identify them and determine with a human factor whether or not it's real and it needs action is going to be pretty fun to see. And then I think automation, a lot of the data entry stuff is going to be pretty interesting as well. Just you think about how many times you're having to key similar things, and the system can look at patterns and say, oh, this is probably this that you're doing, and speed up processes. So I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think along those lines, we got a glimpse of it, with the text enhance at last Suite World. Seemed like NetSuite was kind of, every organization, every corporation has to say something about AI, and that was definitely last fall. And I guess beyond text enhance, I'd say it's likely safe to assume you're going to see, Evan get on stage and, go through more of the traditional, like, look what it can do kind of, use cases that you just laid out. Anything you think we're going to get glimpses more of, or, like an internal chat bot, et cetera?
I'll be interested to see. They started this a couple of years ago with the autonomous database, which is really machine learning. When machine learning and AI, there's some overlap there. I'm sure some folks will argue with me on that, but I mean, machine learning is the precursor to AI, as far as AI is generative, whereas machine learning more looks at issues and determines problems related to that. So Oracle's autonomous database, which they upgraded to, touted heavily, and all of that, has been very interesting as well. So I do think you're going to start to see more what I'll call meat and potatoes of the AI stuff with self-correcting entries. But I'm kind of cynical when it comes to this stuff, so I think it's still further away than a lot of people want to. But as you were talking about the chatbot that I built, I can't really claim that, but it was my first really foray into it, and it's amazing how good you can get just by loading some data in, like guides and how to do things, and then asking it questions, and it spits out pretty accurately what you can do. So you think forward thinking, where I think about this is think about a large organization that has a lot of internal processes. And a lot of these companies have internal documentation on processes, procedures, when to do what, how to do what. Man, imagine having a place where you can just go ask a question.
Yeah.
Right. And it spits out what is the right answer because it's the standard operating procedures of the business. You're removing a whole lot of communication, training back and forth for, what is a standard operating procedure for a business. I think that will have tremendous cost savings for an organization long term. And to be honest, it's pretty damn easy. Like, I was kind of shocked how easy it was to do that in a fairly quick time frame. I mean, and I know you guys have been playing around with it. We haven't pushed it out publicly yet. We hope to in the next few weeks, quarter, but I was definitely shocked at how simple it was to build that thing and just turn it loose and kind of how accurate it was with just loading some documents into it to train it.
Yeah, no, we've certainly seen a couple of apps, especially on Reddit forums, talking about, similar fashion, utilizing NetSuite for training, kind of pseudo support. Logically, of course, NetSuite rolling something out in that vein seems like something we'll see a taste of.
I
At the
would be
very least.
shocked if we didn't. It's so easy to do. And they
Yeah.
have the little chat help guide, but I think if that was truly like AI based, it'd make user adoption a lot easier. I mean, there's all these companies that help with user adoption that have really taken hold over the past 7 to 10 years. UiPath, some of those that are like, hey, walk me. That was the big one on how to use a system. And now we're like, hey, we don't really need that, because I'm sure they're still going to have applications because there's so many systems that are antiquated and don't have the sophistication that like NetSuite can deliver. But man, just being able to plug a user in, reduce a lot of that training and enablement that happens and really guiding a user down the path. I mean, that should have tremendous real savings for organizations, and also remove the barrier of entry to getting live on some of these things. I mean, we've seen it where customers struggle with user adoption because they've done the same thing for decades, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to change.
So I'll keep going down. We'll get into a couple more technical questions here. So as of the end of July, our new parent wants us to switch over to a 445. Lucky them. I see that we can set it up under managing accounting periods instead of full years. Why should I choose? I'm sorry, would I choose July as the first month?
So there's a couple of ways you can do this. So you're going to have to define, first off, Sandbox. Do this in Sandbox, test it. Do not just go into production and start changing accounting periods. The second thing is you can't, if you have transactions posted in that period, you're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to either, it will not let you change those accounting periods. There's a process to go through if you have open transactions within that period. Now, if you are clean and you don't have transactions within that period, what you can do is set up that new period. So close as July 1st or 31st. So you can delete your August period on and all the periods subsequent. Create that August period and define it with your start and end dates. Now, you may have to adjust the end of your fiscal year 2024 to align to when you want to start your 445. Or if it's January 1, that's fine. But essentially, your July or August through December is going to be a bit of a stub period. So you may struggle a little bit when running full fiscal year 2024 reports. So that's a consideration as well if you're going to be concerned about looking at standardized periods. But what it'll allow you to do is then set up those new periods and you're kind of off to the races. And, you know, the good thing about Sandbox, you break it, you refresh it. It's not really a big deal. So definitely test it out there. I actually was playing around with this to make sure I was answering this question correctly before we got on, because I knew the caveats of like you can't have transaction, this and that. So yeah, I mean that's the easy way to do it. If you do have transactions that are in that period, then you're going to need to talk to someone about how those transactions are going to get assigned into the correct period once they're posted. Because NetSuite, if you try to delete the accounting period and there's records in there, it won't let you, and it won't let you have overlapping periods if you're not set up that way. So it doesn't. You're going to have some issues. You can set up different fiscal calendars and run it by that. That's also a feature you'd have to look at. You want to have multiple fiscal calendars, but I do believe it requires one for your financial reporting aspects. And if I misspoke on that, I apologize. It's one of those things that does not crop up very often, so it's not on the top of my head. I always have to like look and research on that one.
No worries. All right. So in the vein of sandboxes, let's keep that trend going. I'm getting ready to do my first sandbox refresh since we went live in production. Will users still be able to work in production during the refresh? The pretty obvious answer here.
Absolutely, yeah. So once you initiate the sandbox, nothing happens in production. Production is always up. Your sandbox it'll refresh. it'll take a backup effectively of production, and then you choose when you want to apply it into the sandbox. Now, when you do that, people will be locked out of the sandbox. A sandbox refresh can take up to 24 hours for that. Honestly, I've not seen them take that long. As with most things with software companies, they're going to tell you the worst case scenario for how long something's going to take so that it doesn't look bad. But in reality, it's usually 8 hours. It really depends on the size of your data. And then it's just a matter of applying it. And once it's applied, you go in, you activate the sandbox, and you're off the races.
I think probably an important distinction here, Glenn. Do I get unlimited sandbox refreshes?
You do not. You get
Shocker.
you get one per month. In with every app with your general sandbox. However, if you do need an extra one, you can call support and they will do it for you. There is a nominal charge. It used to be a couple $100. It's not anything outrageous. But I would definitely clarify that with your account manager and don't take what I say as the gospel there, because NetSuite, that's not a published price thing. It's just, I think it might be on the price list, but it's not something we really run into. Because most of the time people are not refreshing that frequently unless they're really going through some like new integration, new development, new feature integration type thing.
Yeah, I'd also add, you need to be strategic in this. So when you're in the midst of an implementation, have the foresight to realize you can't upgrade, weekly. It is something you should plan at the very beginning of your implementation, or at least speak to consultants or your team on how and when you're going to do that. It's not a fun thing to run into.
Yeah, there's a process for it, definitely. It's not like a nightly refresh where production and sandbox stay mirrored the whole time.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got a question here on profitability report, similar to QuickBooks. Issue is it won't filter by date. The only options are related to the project, not the dates of transactions such as bills and invoices. Not sure I fully understand this question, but.
So I wasn't sure if this was built off of the project report created. It sounds like it might be a saved search or something to that effect, or a custom report. And you may or may not have project profitability in the system. But that is how I would look at this, because you can run that. And I'm assuming this is project related. Typically, that's how people want to talk about project profitability. But yeah, so in the project profitability, you can find different components that go into that, and then it'll break it down by date. So I'm not entirely sure. You can create different configurations for what's included, what's excluded, and it'll include everything related that's tagged to that project, even if it's a journal entry within that report. So, without a little more information, this one's a little tough to answer completely. But yeah, that's my general thought. It sounds like it might be if it's safe search, you should be able to add period or the date range on it. And really, even if it's a custom report, now if it's a suitelet that they built and it's a customization, then they're going to have to edit the code to create the suitelet. And that may be the case too. I've seen that before where people will create, and we've done that before for certain aspects of data where you got to pull it from all over the place. And we don't do that as much anymore. We still do. There's still areas of NetSuite where you can't aggregate all the data that you want to. But I was playing around, as you know, Louis, for us, building some sales versus quota reporting, and the ability to tie different data sets together and link them appropriately within the analytics workbook is pretty. It's finally come a little bit further. It was one of those things that kept waiting, like, come on, get there. Now, if you can just link multiple data sets into a single data cube and then report on all of aspects without different reports, that'd be cool, but we're not there yet. But that could also be an avenue to get that, because then you can pull all of those transactions into that data set and just filter by date, because the dates are going to link, right? It links by the period. So if you have two data sets and you link them and put the dates together, that's going to correspond to the posting period. So of course, that assumes you don't let people post into a different period with a date. You don't have a period date mismatch, which is a big no-no.
So next one, I just added this in. Can you briefly just talk to the audience about Suite Analytics? It's so underutilized, especially the workbooks that are already in there. I don't know that we've got about 5 folks in here. If you're not using Suite Analytics, would love to understand, a little bit more there, Glenn, if you could share how powerful the solution quite candidly is and why everybody on this call really should be taking advantage of Suite Analytics. Probably isn't.
Well, I'll say this. It's where NetSuite is going. We're about to get some insight into the new release where they're going to have this new redwood design. If you look at the pages that they're building now, the 360s, they're all using Suite Analytics. So what we're going to start to see is embedded analytics on pages with this new design. So if you're not using Suite Analytics, you're not going to get your full investment out of NetSuite because that's just the future. We knew that when they started building it. They started this big metadata rewrite all these years ago to kind of standardize what data elements show up. And there's still frustration from my part, I'll be honest, because they don't fully publish what data tables are in there or what tables are in there. What fields. And there's certain fields that don't get exposed. So you're trying to write a report and the field's on a safe search, but it's not in analytics and vice versa. And it's really can be kind of frustrating because it's not clear cut. And I get that you've got a bunch of different developers working on it, but it can be frustrating. But the fact of the matter is that's where the solution's going. So if you aren't investing in that, that is your prerogative. But I will say that the new functionality they're going to deliver, the workbooks and all of that, is going to be built around that. But don't get me wrong, I still love a safe search for just list data. But they've added, it's gotten easier. They still got some ways to go with it, with some of the metrics reporting that you might want. But it's where they're going. So I think what we're going to start to see is what we've seen from some other applications. Like I said, you are in a sales order, you input a customer, and it pulls up like customer information in a separate widget, analytics saying, here's information about this customer sales history, blah, blah, blah. That's just kind of where applications are going, being more data driven.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll go back to a couple of hard hitting questions. Really quick, is there a way to exclude some sales orders from MRP?
I am not positive. I think unapproved sales orders will not be included, but I also think that's going to affect your item commitments or supply allocation if you do that. I would have to test that out. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't have time to test that before this LinkedIn Live, but other than that, there's really not. There's no flag like you can exclude it for commissions, which is kind of annoying. I know, it just looks at sales orders. It says that if there's a demand, then that's what it's going to be. There's no real way for it to exclude from MRP in that fashion. You could create a view that would exclude that order, but it still would flow to a purchase order or work order or anything, even if you exclude it from your viewpoint. No great answer on that one that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, this one is a little bit more specific. Ooh, and it's so long, it just is dragging across the screen. So I'll put it.
My guess is in the CSV import, there's something with the quantity price, and I know you're not using quantity price schedules from what the question text was, but
we can put it in the comments for you.
But yeah, you have pricing quantity. I think you're using to calculate quantity discounts. So my guess is that there's a missing price level or a null somewhere in one of those price discount levels that you have applied. So it's one of those things I have to look at the CSV import. It also should tell you which line it's happening on, and you should see some data irregularity there. And I'll quantify that with I am not the data import export expert or data import expert. That's just not something I've spent a ton of time doing. And like you, I end up with those roadblocks that are kind of frustrating at times. So, but
so let's talk more frustration and negative inventory.
Yep.
Getting negative inventory, can't figure out why. Believe it's overfulfilling, but we check sales orders versus invoices, all matched. How do you investigate this one?
So I would definitely look at what, if you go into the item and there's item activity reports, it'll show you everything in and out. There's safe searches that I've always created that show inventory movements and every in and out. You should also be able to see it on the item 360. And I believe the supply chain snapshot only looks forward, so you're not going to get much value out of that. But we also have done a lot of stuff recreating that looking backwards. However, what I would do is there is a bundle 213294, which is enhanced validations and something else. It's basically what allows you to disable negative inventory inside of NetSuite. And I just recommend it. It prevents user error, it prevents rogue inventory adjustments. I'm not a fan of negative inventory because of the costing aspect of it. Although NetSuite handles it fairly decently, considering with the fact that it uses the last purchase price or last cost. A lot of systems would take a zero value for the negative inventory, and then it starts to affect your costing, which nothing has zero value. You didn't just find it. Somebody somewhere paid for it at some point. But that would be my suggestion. And if you look at all the ins and the outs of the inventory, you could also do some item alerts. If you are using supply chain snapshot, which I recommend, no harm, no foul, even if you turn it on, but it can look forward based off of existing transactions and tell you where you think you're going to be negative. It's a pretty useful little tool. So I would enable that and look at that. And I would also create like an item alert to show negative inventory on my dashboard, so I could see that there. And yeah, that disabling negative inventory should prevent it from happening, so that you don't have to deal with the headache after, because it creates a pain. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I think that's the last of the questions I have on my end. If there's anybody in the audience, we have another minute or two, and then I think wrap up at the West Coast lunch hour. We certainly appreciate you guys listening in today. We will continue this over the course of the next couple months. So if you don't get your question out, please feel free to shoot us a note. Glenn, with another minute or two, do you mind sharing a little bit about Stratus and our managed service offering? I think that'd be beneficial for folks who are listening in, where they can go.
So I lead also at Nuage, our managed services. So proactive engagement to optimize and enhance the NetSuite solution. So we have a dedicated team assigned just to your account that are basically, you can think of it as an extension of your organization. We do an assessment as we come in to help identify areas of potential improvement. You have work with a customer success manager to drive through making sure we're delivering on ROI and promises. And we have intake specialists. We have specialists across multiple areas. And then we also have developers who are assigned to those accounts to handle those areas where it may require some additional customizations and things like that. And our goal is to really be your trusted partner and advisor as it relates to everything NetSuite. We want to be that one-stop shop that helps you not only with the basic blocking and tackling and support, but more the forward-looking of what you can do to better utilize NetSuite so that you're getting the most from your investment. And we do that so that you don't have to go hire 5 different people, right? We have people that specialize in WMS, RevRec, suite billing, MRP, and WMS. Like we manage all that so that you have the right person as you need them. And so, yeah, we've had some success and have some great customers that utilize it. And it's a lot of fun to see some of the improvements we've been able to deliver to customers. And I believe we've got some podcasts out there with some of our Stratus customers and the work that we've done, if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about that. But yeah, if anybody's interested, I'd love to speak with you about it. And, you know, we're not necessarily the right fit for everybody, but we can talk and see if we align on those types of things and see how we might be able to help.
Well, Glenn, thank you again for the time today, and to the listeners, we certainly appreciate you tuning in. Hope to see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis.